Hey everyone, welcome back to Chat Like a Native. You know how we're all about unlocking those secrets to sounding more fluent and natural in English?
Right?
Well, today we're tackling a big one. The idea that you have to memorize every single grammar rule to sound fluent.
Oh, yeah, that's a common one.
It's so tempting to get bogged down in all those rules, though, isn't it?
It really is.
But we're going to debunk that myth today and explore a way more effective and fun way to learn. Contextual learning.
Love it.
We'll chat about why that whole over-memorization thing can actually backfire.
Yeah, you ever get stuck?
Totally. And then we'll dive into how immersing yourself in real-world English can totally change the game for you.
Absolutely.
So get ready to ditch the textbooks and start chatting like a native. So many English learners think that fluency is all about memorizing every single grammar rule.
Mm-hmm. It's a common trap.
Yeah. But I'm curious from your perspective, why do you think that method often backfires?
Well, think about it like this. Have you ever tried to have a conversation while flipping through a grammar textbook in your head? Oh my gosh, no way. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. It just slows you down and makes things so awkward.
Right, and then you end up so focused on the rules that you forget to actually communicate.
Exactly. And English has so many exceptions to the rules anyway.
Ugh, don't even get me started on irregular verbs.
Right. You can't possibly memorize everything.
It's like information overload.
It is. And then you end up afraid to even open your mouth because you're so worried about making a mistake.
Oh yeah, I've totally been there.
It happens to all of us.
I remember one time I was trying to impress this guy I met at a cafe.
Uh-oh.
And I'd been studying all these fancy grammar structures.
Okay.
But then when I tried to use them in conversation, I completely froze.
I can imagine.
I was so focused on getting the grammar perfect that I just stumbled over my words and ended up sounding like a robot.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was so embarrassing.
I bet he was more interested in what you had to say than whether you were using the past perfect continuous correctly.
Right. That's such a good point.
It's about connection, not perfection. Totally. And you know, it's funny. I actually ended up having a much better conversation with the barista.
Really?
Yeah, we were just chatting about our favorite coffee drinks, and it felt so natural and easy.
There you go.
It made me realize that fluency is more about being able to communicate your ideas and connect with people
Exactly.
than it is about speaking perfectly.
100%. And that's where this whole idea of contextual learning comes in.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that. It sounds intriguing.
So think about how you learned your native language. You didn't start by memorizing verb conjugations, did you?
No way. I was too busy playing with blocks and stuff.
Exactly. You learned by listening to others, by observing how language was used in different situations.
Like absorbing it all like a sponge.
Yes. And that's the essence of contextual learning.
I see. So it's about experiencing the language in action.
Exactly.
Instead of just studying it in a vacuum.
Right, and making those connections between words, grammar, and their meanings in real-world scenarios.
Got it. So it's less about the rules and more about the experience.
Exactly. It's like the difference between reading about how to bake a cake and actually getting in the kitchen and doing it.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. When you encounter language in context, it's not just some abstract concept anymore.
It becomes real.
Yes, it's linked to a specific situation, an emotion, a story.
Like when you hear someone say, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse.
Exactly. You instantly picture someone being super hungry.
Yeah, and it's more memorable than just seeing the idiom in a textbook.
Right. This makes it much easier for your brain to absorb and retain information.
I can see that.
And it's not just a theory either.
Oh.
Studies have shown that vocabulary learned in context is remembered far better than vocabulary learned through isolated lists.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It's because our brains are wired to make those connections to link language to experiences.
Makes sense. So if we want to sound more fluent and natural, we need to start experiencing English in a more immersive way. Okay, so we've talked about the power of contextual learning.
Yeah.
But how can we actually apply this to our everyday lives?
Yeah.
I mean, where do we even begin?
Well, there are so many ways to immerse yourself in real-world English.
Right, like what specifically?
One thing that comes to mind is pronunciation.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's a huge part of sounding more natural and confident.
But English pronunciation can be so tricky.
It really can be.
With all those weird sounds and intonation patterns.
I know. It can feel overwhelming.
It does. I still remember when I first moved to the States.
Oh, what happened?
I tried to order a bear at a restaurant.
A bear! Like the animal
I was so hungry, and I wanted a big, juicy burger.
Okay.
but I accidentally pronounced it like beer.
Oh,
The waiter looked at me like I was crazy.
I bet.
It took me a while to realize what I'd done wrong.
Oh, those pronunciation mishaps can be so embarrassing.
They really can.
But you know what the good news is?
What?
Pronunciation is a skill that can be improved with practice.
That's good to hear, because I feel like I'm always battling with those tricky sounds.
I hear you, but there are some really effective techniques you can use.
Like what?
Have you ever heard of shadowing?
Shadowing? Is that like following someone around in the shadows?
Not quite. It's a technique where you listen to a native English speaker and try to mimic their pronunciation as closely as possible.
Oh, so like I'm their shadow. I kind of get it.
Exactly. It's about trying to match their rhythm, intonation, and stress patterns.
So not just the individual sounds, but also the music of their speech.
You got it. It's like you're trying to become a vocal chameleon, blending your voice with theirs.
Wow, that sounds kind of fun, actually.
It is, and you can do it with any audio or video that you enjoy.
So like movies, podcasts, YouTube videos.
Absolutely. The key is to choose something with clear, natural-sounding English.
Got it. So I pick a clip, hit play, and just start mimicking.
Exactly. Try to match the speaker's pace, their pauses, their inflections, everything.
Okay, so I'm not just repeating the words. I'm trying to embody their whole way of speaking.
Yes. And don't be afraid to exaggerate a little. It helps.
Exaggerate, like really ham it up.
Well, not that much, but really focus on getting those sounds right and mimicking the rhythm.
Okay, I can try that.
You might feel a little silly at first,
I can imagine.
but trust me, it makes a huge difference.
So it's like a workout for my mouth, getting it used to forming those English sounds.
Exactly. And as you practice, you'll start to notice those subtle nuances in pronunciation that you might not have picked up on before.
Interesting.
Like how native speakers connect certain words or use intonation to convey different meanings.
Oh, yeah. I've noticed that sometimes a word can sound completely different depending on how it's said.
Exactly. Shadowing helps you tune into those subtleties.
Cool. So it's not just about mimicking. It's about understanding the nuances behind the sounds.
Right. And the more you practice, the more natural and effortless your own pronunciation will become.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to give this shadowing thing a try.
I think you'll be surprised at how quickly you see improvement.
I hope so. Now let's talk about something else that I always find tricky, idioms and colloquialisms.
Ah, yes, the spice of the English language.
I love learning new idioms. They're so colorful and expressive.
They are. They add so much personality to your speech.
But sometimes I'm scared to use them.
Why is that?
What if I use them incorrectly or at the wrong time?
I understand that fear, but honestly, the best way to learn idioms is just to start using them.
But what if I sound silly?
Everyone makes mistakes. Native speakers mess up idioms all the time.
Do they really?
Oh yeah, it happens. The important thing is to not let that fear hold you back.
You're right. It's better to try and maybe make a mistake than to not try at all.
Exactly. And remember, most people will be understanding and even impressed that you're trying to use more advanced language.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
Good. So how do you usually go about learning idioms?
I usually just write them down in a notebook with their meanings,
Okay, that's a good start.
but then I forget them.
Yeah, that's the problem with just memorizing lists.
Right, it doesn't stick.
The key is to learn idioms in context.
So like how native speakers use them in real life.
Exactly. Pay attention to how they use idioms in movies, TV shows, podcasts, even everyday conversations.
Okay, so I need to be more observant.
Yes. And when you hear a new idiom, don't just try to memorize it.
Or should I do that?
Try to figure out its meaning from the context.
So like using my detective skill.
Exactly. And once you think you understand it, try to come up with your own examples.
Using the idiom in a sentence that makes sense to me.
Yes. That's how you really internalize it and make it part of your active vocabulary.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's not just about knowing the idiom, it's about understanding how and when to use it.
Exactly. That's how you'll start sounding more natural and fluent.
This is all starting to make so much sense now.
I'm glad. It's all about connecting the dots between the language and your own experiences.
I like the connecting the dots. So we've covered pronunciation and idioms. What else can we do to sound more like a native speaker?
Well, have you ever thought about the power of storytelling?
Storytelling. How does that fit in?
It's a huge part of communication in any language.
That's true. I guess we're always telling stories in some way.
Exactly. And when you can tell a good story in English, it shows that you have a good grasp of the language and that you can connect with people on a deeper level.
I never thought about it that way.
It's true. Storytelling is all about using language to create vivid images and evoke emotions in your listener.
Wow, that sounds kind of intimidating.
It doesn't have to be. You don't have to be a Shakespeare to tell a good story.
That's a relief because I'm definitely no Shakespeare.
Me neither. The important thing is to relax and be yourself.
So I shouldn't worry too much about making mistakes.
Exactly. Storytelling is about connecting with your audience, not about being perfect.
That makes sense. But how do I even begin? Where do I find stories to tell?
You can find stories everywhere. Think about your own life experiences, your travels, your hobbies, the people you've met.
Oh, I see. It's about tapping into those personal moments.
Yes. What are some things that have made you laugh or cry or feel inspired?
I'm sure I could come up with a few good ones.
I bet you could. And once you have a story in mind, think about how you can structure it in a way that will keep your listener engaged.
So like having a clear beginning, middle, and end.
Exactly. And don't forget to use vivid language and descriptive details to bring your story to life.
So like painting a picture with my words.
Yes. The more specific and evocative your language is, the more your listener will be able to connect with your story.
I see. So storytelling is about more than just the words. It's about creating an experience for the listener.
Exactly. And when you can do that in English, it shows that you've really mastered the art of communication.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from pronunciation and idioms to the power of storytelling.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, and I feel like we've uncovered some really valuable insights into what it takes to sound more fluent and natural in English. But if you had to boil it all down to one key ingredient, what would it be?
That's a great question. I think it all comes down to confidence.
Confidence.
Yeah, it's that belief in yourself that allows you to relax, have fun with the language, and not be afraid to make mistakes.
I love that because when you're confident, it shines through in everything you do.
Exactly. Your body language, your tone of voice, even the way you choose your words, it all reflects that inner confidence.
But confidence can be such a tricky thing, can't it? Especially when you're still learning a language and feeling a bit unsure of yourself.
Absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination.
So true. So how can we cultivate that confidence? What are some practical steps we can take?
Well, one of the most important things is to practice, practice, practice.
Makes sense. The more we use English, the more comfortable we become.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything formal or structured.
Like, what do you mean?
Just find opportunities to use English in your everyday life.
So like chatting with friends, watching movies, listening to music.
All of that. The key is to make it a habit to surround yourself with the language as much as possible.
Soaking it up like a sponge.
Exactly. And as you practice, don't be afraid to challenge yourself.
Like step outside of my comfort zone.
Yes. Try using those new words and phrases you've learned, even if you're not 100% sure they're correct.
That can be scary.
I know, but remember, mistakes are part of the learning process.
It's how we grow.
Exactly.
Right.
And the more you allow yourself to make mistakes, the faster you'll learn and the more confident you'll become.
That's a good reminder. Because sometimes I get so caught up in trying to be perfect.
I know, it's easy to fall into that trap.
And then I end up not speaking at all because I'm too afraid to make a mistake.
I understand. But remember, fluency is not about perfection. It's about communication.
It's about connecting with people, sharing ideas, and expressing yourself.
Exactly. And when you shift your focus from perfection to connection, you'll find that your confidence naturally starts to grow.
That's a really powerful insight.
And another important tip is to be kind to yourself.
What do you mean?
Learning a language takes time and effort.
It does.
So don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight.
Easy to say, hard to do.
I know, but it's important to celebrate your progress along the way no matter how small.
Like give myself a high five for ordering a coffee in English without messing up.
Exactly. Those little victories are what keep you motivated and moving forward.
I love that, celebrating the small wins.
It makes the journey so much more enjoyable.
It does. And speaking of journeys, I feel like we've come full circle today.
In what way?
Well, we started by debunking the myth that fluency is all about memorizing grammar rules.
Right?
And we ended up discovering that it's actually about so much more than that.
It's about experiencing the language, connecting with people, and embracing the journey.
Exactly. And having fun along the way.
Absolutely. Because when you enjoy the process, the results will follow.
So true. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of Chat Like a Native.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you today.
Likewise, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into sounding more fluent and natural in English.
And remember, you're capable of achieving anything you set your mind to.
Keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and keep those conversations flowing.
We'll see you next time.
Bye for now.